The first thing you will notice is that security is very good. This guy might look nice and relaxed, but just try getting into the building without his permission and you'll probably wish you'd never been born. And you only get to see him if you manage to get past the guard at the gate. I'm not too sure if this is a good sign for the building or a bad sign for the city. But once you have proved you are who you say you are, handed over all booking details and the contents of your passport for copying, you are then permitted to use the Wi-Fi to contact the apartment owner, while still being kept out of the building. Once you meet the owner and get your key, you'll be allowed into the building. The reception area looks nice and the lifts look modern, but there's only 3 of them and they're quite small. And this is a very large building with hundreds of apartments and lots of people with large suitcases filling those lifts up. So you'll need plenty of time to get up or down. About an hour should do it. Yeah, I'm not joking. It can take an hour to get down from a high floor, especially at checkout time. I'm claustrophobic and I tried the stairs once, but guess what? That fire door at the bottom was locked. Once you get out of the reception area, the sparkle seems to go out of the building. This is not a prison corridor. This is actually the corridor to your room. Here we are at 26.5. The door was locked. I just opened it a little while ago. And I came in here and I realised that it does look like maybe one apartment has been split into 2 smaller ones. And I'm in number B. So just turn the light off and go through. And at first glance, I thought, ooh, this is rather nice. So here we are in the apartment. It is actually rather nice. Unfortunately, I believe it was designed by a man. Most women will understand what I mean. One of the reasons I try to rent apartments with kitchens is because I'm celiac. And in Asia, that is not really understood. But wherever I am in the world, I have a problem eating out because if I don't know what's in something, I can't risk eating it. So I thought I was going to be able to cook here as I do in the apartment in Vietnam, but I couldn't. I couldn't even have a cup of coffee. I brought my own coffee. Unfortunately, I didn't bring my own mug, so I had to go out to the supermarket before I could have a cup of coffee. So let's start with this man-designed kitchen. It has rather a fancy microwave. I actually don't do microwaves. I like to cook food, not obliterate it. So I didn't use that. I'm sure it works quite well. As you can see, it's not even plugged in. I didn't bother. This is, well, the kettle works. I think it's quite new because it's still got the plastic on the top from the manufacturer. But the kettle was full of water when I came. Which is not really a good idea because it causes scale. But this is a teapot and I'm not sure why anybody would expect to need to keep tea warm. Unless you like stewed tea. Then we have the hot plate. Now this looks like it should be on a space shuttle somewhere. I did manage to turn it on. I'm not very technically minded, but I did manage to turn it on. I couldn't use it, however. Not because I couldn't understand it, but because you just can't cook in this kitchen. It's not really a kitchen, is it? It's just for show. I said about the cupboards here, and there are lots and lots of cupboards, and they're all empty. There's your kitchen equipment, there. And if you open this cupboard, there is one saucepan, which I'm only 5 foot tall, so I couldn't reach that. I had to get a stool to stand on to get it. I got it down, I had a look, and I put it straight back up. At some point, somebody has obviously attempted to burn right through the bottom of it, so yeah, I wasn't going to use that. The only other kitchen equipment we have is in the drawer down here, and that is it. Not quite sure where you're going to chop with that knife. It's probably bigger than the chopping board. And the scissors, well, yeah, I suspect they're for opening your takeaway or something, or your microwave pouch. Don't things come in pouches sometimes to go in microwaves? I don't know. Anyway, like I said, you can't cook in this kitchen. It isn't really a kitchen. It's more of an afterthought. The washing machine also lights up and has flashing lights and dials and all sorts of things on it when it's working, or when it's turned on. I didn't actually bother to work that one out. I'm only here for a couple of days. There is a bin in that cupboard, and that's it. Nice big sink here. You really don't have much to wash up. Which is good, because the washing up liquid appears to have been watered down so much you could possibly drink it. There is a fridge freezer. I expect that's for putting your takeaways in when you don't eat them or something, or maybe for putting your drinks in. I put my ice cream in the freezer, so I was quite happy with that. Next to that is an ironing board, and as I've said, I'm only 5 foot tall, and I would have to bend down to use that ironing board. Let's just put a small iron on it, and I'll show you what I mean. You can see by the size of my hand there that is actually quite a small iron, and if I go back a bit, you can see the size of the iron on the ironing board. I'm actually not sure if that's a real ironing board or maybe it's a toy. I don't know, does it come from Toys R Us? Is it handy for teaching your child, I suppose? The other thing is, of course, you've got tiled floors, so it does wriggle around as soon as you breathe heavy on it or something. Put the iron back over there. Right, next we have a TV. It's a very big TV, and it is on a swivel. So you can move it up and down and round corners and everything, and you can turn it on, but the one thing you can't do is watch it, because it needs to be connected to the internet. And well, I couldn't work out how you're supposed to do that. It tells you that it needs to be connected to the internet, and it tells you that the internet isn't available. So yeah, I left that. I don't bother with TVs anyway. We have air conditioning, which I didn't actually bother with because it wasn't necessary. And we also have a fan above the bed, and that fan turns on when you put the bathroom light on. Yeah, like I said, this room was designed by a man. Back over here, we have a breakfast bar, which looks very modern and nice and new. A bit pointless when you probably can't have breakfast here unless you like cereal. And I think it would be nicer if you had something to look at while you're eating your breakfast, but I suppose most people would prop their phones up against the wall or something and look at that. I have absolutely no idea what that green thing is. It's very lightweight and very pointless. I have no idea what that's for. I also don't really have much of an idea as to why those lights are there right by the window. You can't, wouldn't they be over the breakfast bar or something? They're collecting dust. I can't think that they'd be doing anything else. Here is the view. I know a lot of people who will say, oh, that's a wonderful view, isn't it? No, I don't actually think so, but it is the centre of a city. And those two pointy things over there are Kuala Lumpur's Twin Towers. And there's a little, you can't really see it now because it's misty out, but there's an orange kind of building over there. And at night when the lights are on it, it kind of reminds me of one of these samurai warriors, but he's got the typical Vietnamese hat on. Yeah, maybe that's just my imagination. If you can't sleep at night, you can, instead of counting sheep, you can count cars that go past on the road. It's actually quite nice to lay in bed at night and look at the lights. You don't actually see the roof of the shopping centre or that building there when you're in bed. And you can look out, because I don't recommend closing the curtains. As I've said, this apartment is probably designed by a man, and the only light switches are here by the door. So if you've got the curtains closed and you turn the light off, you risk tripping up over one of them mats on your way back to bed. But that's just a minor thing. Actually, the lights didn't bother me at all. I thought it was quite nice to look out at 2 o'clock in the morning. You can hear the traffic, but it's a minor hum. It's one of those background noises that you can ignore. The worst of the noise comes from what I suspect is possibly an elephant sanctuary upstairs. And those elephants tend to move furniture in the middle of the night, so that wasn't very nice. But here we have the living area. That sofa is actually quite comfortable. I'm not quite sure what that is. I think it's supposed to be a coffee table. I wasn't sure if it needed a bin liner or perhaps you're supposed to put your post in there or something, I don't know. But it is actually the right height to put your legs on if you're sitting on the sofa, so it's quite comfy. Here we have a bedside table with a plug socket next to it. Just one thing that some people might not realise is in Malaysia, we have 3-pin plug sockets like in the UK. So don't bring your 2-pin plug sockets like I did. Otherwise you'll have to go out and buy another charger when you buy your coffee mug. The bed actually is quite comfortable. Got no complaints with that. And for those of you who never leave Northern Europe, you might think that quilt is a little on the thin side. It isn't, it's actually a little on the thick side. The temperature here is quite warm. There is your wardrobe. So yeah, they're obviously not expecting anybody to be here more than a day or two. And then we go to the bathroom. Over to the bathroom, which is actually quite nice. That is the only mirror, and the lights are up there. So ladies, if you're the type to wear makeup, you would be advised to bring your own mirror with lights because you can't really see much in there. And men, if you like to have a decent shave, you probably might want to do the same thing. There is no shaving socket, of course, or no shelf to put anything on, but this is Malaysia. The shower is actually rather nice, easy to understand even for me. I was able to control the temperature quite well and keep it nice and cool. You don't really want a hot shower in this weather. And I like the fact that there's very little glass, because glass is very difficult to keep clean, especially around water. And this is actually quite clean. The shower might be very nice, but this little handheld one for the toilet leaves a lot to be desired. It's a two-handed one. You have to hold one end with one hand and then swivel around and turn it on with the other hand. And when you turn it on, you get a few dribbles coming out, so it's basically useless. So we have to be European in this bathroom. Of course, there are the obligatory slippers. I don't ever really use them because I never know whose feet have been in them before. And of course, there's a bin there and the obligatory germ collector. Those things are disgusting. There is free Wi-Fi here, of course, but you're going to have to reconnect every time you want to use it. It doesn't stay connected, but it's quite good when it is working. The man who owns this building doesn't live here, so you do need to give him a reasonable idea of what time you're going to be arriving, because he has to come from somewhere else and hand the key over. I was about an hour late due to traffic, and never having been here before, I didn't know what it was going to be like. And he was a little bit sarcastic at first, but once I actually met him and he brought the key over, he was actually quite nice. And it's for the same reason that they do have strict rules about checkout time.